$1,000 a month. That is the number most people use when they start researching life abroad. It is the number that appears in every How to Retire Early article, every digital nomad budget guide, every YouTube video about escaping the cost of living crisis back home. $1,000. Can you actually live on it? And if so, where? I have spent serious time in two countries that come up in this conversation more than almost anywhere else right now: Sri Lanka and Vietnam. I lived across multiple cities in both. I tracked my expenses. I talked to expats who had been there for years. I compared the beaches, the food, the internet, the healthcare, the culture, the visa situation, and the daily texture of life. And I am going to answer to the question most travel videos avoid. Not just whether $1,000 is enough in each country, but which country actually wins, and why. Because they are not equal, and pretending they are does not help you make a real decision. Let us get into it. Before the comparison, let me give you the honest context. Sri Lanka and Vietnam are often mentioned in the same breath. Both are in Asia. Both are significantly cheaper than Western countries. Both have beautiful coastlines, rich culture, and growing expat communities. But they are fundamentally different places. Vietnam is a country of 97 million people. It has been integrating into the global economy for 30 years. Its major cities, Ho Chi Minh City, Hanoi, Da Nang, have modern infrastructure, fast internet, international hospitals, and co-working spaces on every corner. It receives millions of tourists every year, and the tourism infrastructure reflects that. Sri Lanka is an island of 22 million people. It has been through a civil war, a devastating tsunami, a terrorist attack, and a severe economic crisis. All within the last 20 years, it is rebuilding, it is developing, but it is earlier in that process than Vietnam. When I was in both countries, the difference was visible immediately. Vietnam felt more developed, more urban, more connected to the global economy. Sri Lanka felt more raw, more authentic, more like what Southeast Asia used to be before the digital nomad industry arrived and started optimizing. Both of those things are true at the same time, and both matter for what $1,000 actually buys you. Round 1. Accommodation. Let us start with the biggest expense, where you sleep. In Vietnam, $1,000 a month gives you serious options. In Da Nang, currently the most popular city for long-term expats, you can rent a fully furnished modern one-bedroom apartment with air conditioning, fast Wi-Fi, and ocean views for $350 to $450 per month. That leaves you $600 for everything else. In Ho Chi Minh City, the most expensive Vietnamese city, a good apartment in a central district runs $400 to $550, still leaving you $450 to $600 for the rest of your life. In Hanoi, a furnished apartment in the Old Quarter or a well-located neighborhood costs $250 to $350, leaving you the most breathing room of any major Vietnamese city. The apartments themselves are genuinely modern. New buildings, functioning elevators, reliable hot water, air conditioning that works. The kind of place you would be happy to show someone back home without embarrassment. In Sri Lanka, $1,000 also goes a long way, but differently. In Colombo, a decent furnished apartment in a good neighborhood costs $300 to $450 per month. Similar to Da Nang in price, but the quality of the building and the surrounding infrastructure is more variable. Some are excellent, some require more patience. Outside Colombo, in Ella, Mirissa, Arugam Bay, Gal, accommodation options shift away from apartments toward guest houses and smaller rental properties. A private room in a well-run guest house in Ella costs $25 to $40 per night, which becomes $700 to $1,200 for a full month. Too expensive for a long-term budget. The better approach outside Colombo is to negotiate monthly rates directly with guest house owners or find privately listed rooms. A private room with a bathroom in a local family home in Gal or Mirissa can be found for $150 to $250 per month, with some searching. The honest difference is this. In Vietnam, the rental market for foreigners is well established. Listings are easy to find, prices are transparent. You know what you are getting. In Sri Lanka, outside Colombo, the rental market for long-term foreign residents is less developed. Finding good accommodation requires more effort, more local knowledge, and more time on the ground. Winner, Vietnam. More consistent quality, easier to navigate, better value for money across all major cities. Round 2. Food. This is where both countries shine, but they shine differently. Vietnam's food culture is one of the greatest in the world. That is not a promotional statement. It is a widely held view among food writers, chefs, and travelers who have eaten seriously across Asia. Pho, banh mi, bun cha, sao lao, com tam, fresh spring rolls, egg coffee. Each city has its own specialties. Each street corner has its own version of dishes that have been refined over generations, and the prices make it almost impossible to spend much money on food if you eat locally. A bowl of pho, $1.60. A banh mi, $1. A full rice and meat dish at a local restaurant, $2.40. A sit-down meal with soup, main course, and a cold drink, under $5. I ate out for every meal for 30 days in Vietnam. My total food spend, $250. Sri Lanka's food culture is less internationally celebrated, but genuinely extraordinary in its own right. Rice and curry is the foundation of Sri Lankan eating. Not one curry, many. A plate of rice surrounded by 3, 4, 5 different curries, each with a different flavor profile, different heat level, different vegetable or protein. It is one of the most complex and satisfying meals in Asia, and it costs under $2 at a local restaurant. Kotu roti, chopped flatbread stir-fried with vegetables, egg, and your choice of meat on a hot griddle. The sound of the metal scrapers audible from the street before you even see the restaurant is one of the great street foods anywhere. Hoppers, bowl-shaped fermented rice flour crepes, crispy at the edges and soft in the center, eaten with coconut sambal and curry, are extraordinary for breakfast at about 50 cents each. My food spend in Sri Lanka over 30 days, approximately $220, marginally cheaper than Vietnam. But the range of options is narrower outside the cities, and the quality of ingredients varies more by location. Winner. Draw, Vietnam wins on variety and consistency. Sri Lanka wins on authenticity and the specific pleasures of rice and curry culture. Both are extraordinary. Both are affordable. This one comes down to personal taste. Round 3. Internet and infrastructure. This is not a close contest, and if you are working remotely, it matters more than almost anything else. Vietnam's internet infrastructure is modern, fast and reliable in the major cities. Average speeds in Ho Chi Minh City and Da Nang run 50 to 80 megabits per second. Fast enough for video calls, large file uploads, streaming, and everything a remote worker needs. Co-working spaces are everywhere. Da Nang alone has dozens of well-equipped spaces with backup power, fast dedicated connections, and monthly rates of $100 to $180. Even cafe Wi-Fi in Vietnam is generally fast. Most cafes in major cities have decent connections, and an unspoken understanding that laptop workers are welcome. Outside the major cities, speeds drop, but mobile data is fast enough for most purposes, and a local SIM with unlimited data costs $8 per month. Sri Lanka is a different story. In Colombo, 30 to 50 megabits per second in a good apartment. Functional for most remote work needs. Leave Colombo, and the situation changes significantly. I stayed in multiple guest houses across Ella, Marissa, and Aragon Bay. Not one of them had internet I would describe as reliable for professional use. Wi-Fi signals that did not reach the rooms. Speeds that dropped to unusable during busy hours. Upload times that turned simple tasks into 30-minute ordeals requiring multiple attempts. Mobile data is improving in Sri Lanka, but coverage is inconsistent outside urban areas, and speeds drop sharply in the evenings when networks get congested. And then there are the power cuts. In my 30 days in Sri Lanka, I experienced 6 power outages. Most lasted between 1 and 3 hours. They were not predictable. They happened in the evenings, during the day, occasionally in the middle of the night. For someone working to deadlines or on important calls, an unannounced 2-hour power cut is a serious problem. Sri Lanka's power grid is more stable than it was during the economic crisis of 2022, but it has not yet reached the consistency of Vietnam or Thailand. Winner, Vietnam. By a significant margin, for anyone working remotely, this category alone may determine the decision. Vietnam's infrastructure is reliable. Sri Lanka's, outside Colombo, is not. Round 4. Culture and authenticity. Here the calculation reverses. Vietnam is culturally extraordinary. Its history, its food culture, its art, its architecture, all of it is genuinely rich and worth years of exploration. But Vietnam's most visited areas have also been shaped by decades of mass tourism. The old quarter in Hanoi is beautiful but busy. The ancient town in Hoi An is stunning but optimized for Instagram. The beaches of Da Nang are excellent but lined with development. You can find authentic Vietnam, but in the most popular areas, you have to look for it. Step 2 streets off the main tourist corridor, and the real city grows. But the tourist layer is not the places most people go. Sri Lanka has a different problem. It does not yet have a thick tourist layer in most places. The temples are attended by people who are there to pray. The beaches are used by local fishermen in the mornings. The trains carry ordinary Sri Lankans going about their ordinary lives. Even in the most visited areas, the ratio of local life to tourist performance is still heavily weighted toward the local and the people. I have mentioned this in other videos, but it bears repeating in the context of a direct comparison. Sri Lankan people have a quality of warmth that is difficult to quantify, but impossible to miss. Not the professional hospitality of a country that has spent decades learning what tourists want, something more fundamental than that. A man who walked 10 minutes out of his way to show me a street I was looking for. A guest house owner who drove me to a pharmacy at night and refused payment for the petrol. A family on a train who shared food with a stranger because he looked hungry. These interactions happened repeatedly. Not as exceptions, but as a pattern. Vietnam has warm people too, many of them. But the relationship between local and foreigner in Vietnam's tourist areas has been shaped by decades of commercial interaction. The warmth exists, but it coexists with a well-developed understanding of what foreigners want and what they will pay. In Sri Lanka, that commercial layer is thinner. The warmth reaches you more directly. Winner, Sri Lanka. For cultural authenticity and genuine human connection, Sri Lanka is ahead. For cultural richness and variety, it is closer. But the texture of daily interaction in Sri Lanka is something that travelers consistently describe as one of the most memorable parts of the experience. Round 5. Natural beauty. Both countries are visually stunning, but they offer completely different kinds of beauty. Vietnam is long and narrow, stretching nearly 2,000 kilometers from north to south. It contains mountains, rice terraces, coastline river deltas, limestone karst formations, and highland plateaus. The variety is extraordinary. Ha Long Bay in the north, thousands of limestone islands rising from green water, is one of the most dramatic landscapes in Asia. The rice terraces of Musang Chai glow gold during harvest season in a way that photographs cannot fully capture. The beaches of Da Nang and Phu Quoc are modern, well-equipped, and genuinely beautiful. Sri Lanka is smaller but in some ways more concentrated. The south coast beaches, Marissa, Anawatuna, Tangale, Arugam Bay, are some of the best in Asia, not because of facilities or development, but because of what they lack. Space, silence, the feeling that you found something rather than something being sold to you. The Central Highlands are among the most visually striking landscapes I have seen anywhere. The tea estates of Ella and Nuwara Elia, rolling hills of impossible green, managed with extraordinary precision, set against a sky that seems closer than it should be at altitude, belong in a different category of beauty from most things you will see in Asia. The Nine Arches Bridge near Ella, ancient ruins at Sigiriya and Polonnaruwa that rival Angkor Wat for historical weight but receive a fraction of the visitors. Leopards in Yala National Park, blue whales off the southern coast, the largest animals on Earth, visible from small boats in clear water. Sri Lanka is a country that rewards the traveler who slows down. Its beauty is not always immediately dramatic. It accumulates. Winner, draw. Sri Lanka wins on intimacy and the feeling of genuine discovery. Both deserve serious time. Round 6, visa and long-term stay. For anyone thinking about staying longer than a holiday, this matters. Vietnam has made significant progress on long-term visa options. The e-visa allows 90 days. The DN visa for digital nomads and business visitors allows 1 year with a local sponsor, typically arranged through a visa agency for $300 to $500 annually. The process requires some administrative effort, but is well understood and widely used by the long-term expat community. Sri Lanka is simpler for short stays, 30 days free on arrival, extendable online for 60 more days for $100. Total bureaucracy time, approximately 20 minutes. But for stays longer than 90 days, Sri Lanka becomes more complicated. There is no equivalent of Vietnam's well-established long-term nomad visa pathway. Extensions require more engagement with the immigration system. The process is less transparent and less supported by an established service industry. With Vietnam, for short visits, Sri Lanka is simpler. For stays of 6 months or more, Vietnam's infrastructure of visa agents, established pathways and clear processes makes it significantly easier to manage. Round 7. Tourism density and crowds. Here is the observation that surprised me most when I was in both countries. Vietnam has more tourists, significantly more. In Hoi An ancient town on a weekend, the streets are genuinely crowded. In Hanoi's Old Quarter during peak season, finding a quiet cafe requires walking away from the main streets. Da Nang's beachfront is lined with development that tells you this city has been discovered and optimized. Sri Lanka, even in its most visited areas, feels emptier. Larissa Beach on a Tuesday morning, a handful of people. Arches Bridge at 7 in the morning before the tour groups arrive, almost nobody. Arugam Bay during shoulder season, surfers and a few travelers with no feeling of saturation. For older travelers, for people whose priority is space, quiet and the feeling of genuine discovery rather than being part of a crowd, this difference matters enormously. Vietnam is more developed. Vietnam is easier. Vietnam has better infrastructure. But Sri Lanka still has something Vietnam is slowly losing in its most popular areas. The feeling that you got there before everyone else. Winner, Sri Lanka. For travelers who prioritize space and authenticity over convenience, Sri Lanka wins clearly. The verdict. So where does $1,000 a month actually get you? In Vietnam, a modern furnished apartment, eating out every day, fast reliable internet, easy transport, access to good healthcare, and enough left over for weekend trips, and a comfortable social life. You live well. You work comfortably. The infrastructure supports you. In Sri Lanka, a simpler but deeply rewarding life. Cheaper food, emptier beaches, warmer human interactions, more authentic cultural experiences. But slower internet, occasional power cuts, and a rental market that requires more effort to navigate. Category by category. Accommodation, Vietnam wins. Food, draw. Internet and infrastructure, Vietnam wins. Clearly, culture and authenticity, Sri Lanka wins. Natural beauty, draw. Visa and long-term stay, Vietnam wins. Crowds and space, Sri Lanka wins. On paper, Vietnam wins more categories. And for most people, particularly those working remotely, those who prioritize reliability, and those staying for 6 months or more, Vietnam is the stronger practical choice. But here is what the numbers do not capture. Sri Lanka gives you something that is harder to find in Vietnam's more developed tourist infrastructure. The feeling of arriving somewhere before the world has fully optimized it for your consumption. That feeling has a value, and it is becoming rarer. I love both countries. I would go back to both tomorrow. But if I had to choose one for long-term living, for building real life rather than an extended holiday, I would choose Vietnam. Better infrastructure, better internet, more established community, easier to navigate for the long term. And if I wanted a month that reminded me why I started traveling in the first place, why I left the comfortable and predictable world behind, I would go to Sri Lanka. $1,000 a month. In Vietnam, it buys you a life. In Sri Lanka, it buys you an experience. Both are worth having, but only one of them is built to last. Thanks for watching. Sri Lanka or Vietnam? Which one would you choose? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to see where this community lands on this one. And if you want my full dedicated videos on each country separately, Both are already on the channel. See you in the next one. Let me add one more thing that the category breakdown does not fully capture: the age of your fellow travelers. This is something I noticed consistently across both countries, and it is relevant if you are thinking about which community you want to be part of. Vietnam, particularly Da Nang, Ho Chi Minh City, and the backpacker corridors, skews young. The co-working spaces are full of people in their 20s and early 30s building startups or working remote jobs they landed 2 years ago. The social scene is active and energetic, but it is calibrated to a younger demographic. Sri Lanka attracts a more mixed crowd. Yes, there are young backpackers in Aragan Bay and on the Ella Party circuit, but there is also a significant presence of older travelers, people in their 40s, 50s and beyond, who specifically chose Sri Lanka because it offers a slower, quieter, more contemplative travel experience. For travelers whose preference is for depth over speed, for conversation over nightlife, for waking up early rather than staying out late, Sri Lanka's demographic mix often feels like a better fit. Vietnam has this too. The expat retirement community in Da Nang and Nha Trang is growing, but the dominant energy in Vietnam's most popular areas is younger and faster. Neither is better. They are different, and knowing which environment suits you is part of making the right choice. One final practical note on the $1,000 question. I said Vietnam buys you a life, and Sri Lanka buys you an experience. Let me be more specific about what that means in practice. In Vietnam, on $1,000, you have a monthly surplus. After rent, food, transport, utilities and entertainment, most people living comfortably in Da Nang or a smaller Vietnamese city have money left over. That surplus means flexibility, weekend trips, a nicer dinner, an unexpected opportunity, a buffer for months when something goes wrong. In Sri Lanka, on $1,000, you are comfortable but the margin is thinner, particularly if you are staying somewhere with tourist pricing or in a guest house rather than a rented apartment. The $1,000 budget works, but it requires more active management, more decisions, more awareness of where your money is going. For people on a fixed income, a pension, a freelance retainer, a set monthly transfer from savings, the predictability of Vietnam's costs is genuinely valuable. You know what things cost. The prices are consistent. The surprises are rare. Sri Lanka's costs are less predictable. Transport prices vary. Accommodation outside Colombo is harder to lock in at a fixed monthly rate. The economic recovery is still finding its level, and prices in tourist areas have been moving upward in ways that make budgeting slightly less certain. $1,000 works in both countries, but in Vietnam, it works with comfort and consistency. In Sri Lanka, it works with attention and flexibility. Know which kind of